Hey everyone, I'm Tassenix, and welcome back to another mod guide video. This time we're digging into Morgan Elsbeth. She is the tank of the new Night Sisters team under the Great Mothers. I did just cover her in the last video, or them rather, and now it's time to dig into Morgan. So, before we go too much further, let's go ahead and do the TLDR for Morgan Elsbeth. Her set types should be Tenacity, or you might consider a mixture of Tenacity and Defense, or Tenacity and Health, probably a little less preferred than the Defense. Arrow should ideally be a Fast Protection. Usually I'm saying a Speed Arrow, or if you can stretch for it, a Fast Bulk Primary on a lot of characters. In this case, there's such a huge synergy for the protection here. I really want you to try and push for that Fast Protection Primary here. Speed if you need to, though. Alright, Circle. We will generally be favoring protection over health. There are bonuses to both for this team, but Morgan herself gives out a 50% protection bonus to the entire team, so for her case in particular, we would prefer to see her in Protection Primary for both Circle and Triangle, and the cross should be Tenacity. It is pretty important that this character isn't jammed up when she's able to go, and even though blessed characters can't be stunned, and you might be putting on Blessed on her most of the time, she won't always be getting Blessed, so it is important for her to not get jammed up. Turn order, she'll end up being second. Great Mothers ends up being naturally very fast, and it seems pretty comfortable for her to be faster than Morgan. I don't think there's a big difference if Morgan and Great Mothers are very close in speed or one's just a couple faster than the other. It just seems to me that it's reasonable to have Great Mothers first, Morgan second, and go from there. Stat priority should be Tenacity over Speed, over Protection / Defense, but I want to make a couple points here. First, 60% Tenacity is granted through uniques on this team, from Morgan and from Great Mothers. So if you mod her between 140 and 180% Tenacity on her character sheet, the 140 will protect you for, somebody having plus 100 base, plus 100 added potency, okay? If you go up to 180, you're covered through up to 140% potency. Very few teams are running that high, but for those that do, you would be protected. So manage your Tenacity needs accordingly. Okay, now that we've covered that, I also wanted to have a quick refresher on the effects of running under the Great Mother. So her leadership will highlight Threads of Destiny. Night Sister allies gain 30% defense, max health, and 30 speed. Those allies who have the Blessed effect have plus 20% max health and offense. The Great Mother's unique to the old ways provides Night Sister allies with 30% accuracy, max health, and tenacity, but they cannot be revived. And whenever an enemy is critically hit, Great Mothers and all Blessed allies gain 1% offense, stacking for 2 turns, and recover 2% protection, doubled if the enemy had vulnerable. Alright, so now that we've covered those details, let's dig in to her unique Preordained Destiny. At the start of battle, all Night Sister allies gain 10% crit chance, defense, and max health, 30% tenacity, and 50% max protection. Whenever another Night Sister ally stealths, they gain 15% critical damage for 1 turn, Morgan taunts for 2 turns, and all Night Sister allies recover 25% health. Whenever a Night Sister ally gains Foresight, they gain 20% offense for 1 turn, and all Night Sister allies recover 25% protection. So she's providing, passive health and protection recovery, Foresight, offense. Whenever a Night Sister ally critically hits an enemy, that enemy is inflicted with defense down for 1 turn, which can't be resisted. The first time each other Night Sister ally falls below 20% health, they gain Foresight and Stealth for 2 turns, Morgan gains 20% defense until the end of the encounter, and they and Morgan recover 30% health and protection and gain 30% turn meter. When Morgan is defeated, inflict all enemies with health down for 2 turns, which can't be dispelled, evaded, or resisted. And all Night Sister allies recover 100% health and protection, and gain 5% crit avoidance and defense, plus an additional 10% critical avoidance and defense per relic amplifier level Morgan had until the end of the encounter. Okay, So this is a lot. There's a ton in this kit. All right, first of all, we have the passive stats handed out. That 50% protection might have you thinking that other characters on this team may benefit more from having a protection primaries instead of health. I would say, for the most part, I would let Morgan be the one rocking a ton of protection. I would say I'd favor health for our attackers, because your attackers are also going to have lifesteal involved. There's other bonuses for health in there. But for her in particular, we really want to lean into this protection because she'll be huge, okay? So all this passive benefit granted, stacking defense for herself, and then this major death benefit, right? So this is why when you're fighting against this team, ideally you're able to control her, set her to the side, and kind of finish her off last. If she dies and other allies are still around, they get a lot for their trouble, okay? Whenever Morgan taunts, all nightsister allies recover 20% health and protection and gain 15% offense until she loses taunt. Whenever she loses taunt, she recovers 5% health and protection and gains 10% turn meter. You know, some of these tracks are better than others as far as fitting into a video. All right. Whenever she loses taunt, she recovers 5% health and protection and gains 10% turn meter. Defeated allies can't be revived. This effect persists through defeat. So you saw that in the last video with Great Mothers, it calls out that nightsister allies can't be revived. This unique is saying defeated allies can't be revived. So you would usually be using this character in some nightsister team, I would imagine. But if you had the mind to plug and play her anywhere else, know that this unique would shut off any ally from being able to revive. Alright, let's talk about the basic Blade of Talza. Excuse me. Deal physical damage to target enemy, and Morgan gains defense up and protection up 50% for one turn. If target enemy is inflicted with defense down, the weakest other non-tank nightsister ally stealths for one turn. If Morgan is taunting, inflict target enemy with vulnerable for one turn. Alright. Her first special, My Loyalty, My Life. Dispel all buffs on all enemies, and all nightsister allies recover 50% health and protection, and gain defense penetration up for 2 turns. If Morgan is taunting, all nightsister allies gain 20% turn meter and tenacity up for 2 turns. Alright, second special, Let None Pass. Deal physical damage to target enemy, blind them for 1 turn, inflict them with armor shred for the rest of the encounter, and call all other nightsister allies to assist. If this attack defeats an enemy, blind all enemies for 2 turns which can't be evaded or resisted. With the Grand Arena Omicron applied, stagger target enemy for 2 turns, and expose all enemies and inflict them with buff immunity for 2 turns. If target enemy is inflicted with defense down, nightsister allies deal an additional 5% damage, and the cooldown of their abilities is decreased by 1. All nightsister allies gain frenzy for 1 turn and protection up 50% for 2 turns. There's a lot baked into that Omicron. Okay, so, the stagger getting applied will immediately be triggered by the mass assist. So you're going after a priority target that's just about to go, ideally, and you're shutting them down. You have defense down that gets applied through Morgan, and I want to say, a couple other characters have the ability to apply defense down. So you'd have this additional 5% damage getting done, cooldown increase on the enemy. It's nice. All right, let's just for a moment talk about team comps and turn order real quick. I did cover this in detail in the last Great Mothers video, so I won't go into great length here, but she is core to the team. Great Mothers and Morgan, let's say in 3 versus 3, are absolutely bound at the hip, I think. You can have some flexibility with who you want as your third. I've seen Spirit and Death Trooper Peridia offer some pretty good threats. I have seen opponents throw in nightsister Acolyte. Maybe if you had, if you wanted to use your DTP with your DTMG team, or Enoch, and you had a better use for your nightsister Spirit with another, nightsister team, okay, maybe you could go Acolyte. But I think that's kind of the least of those 3. And then, of course, in 5 versus 5, I did discuss this in the Great Mothers video, you have a variety of options for who you might slot in here. Although, for my money, I will probably favor Talia. Alright, let's talk now about her mods. I've gone ahead and pulled up a couple of other players. This is not the droid I was looking for. So I myself, I guess I can start with my mods because mine are kind of a work in progress. Okay, I'm with defense and health sets, and I've got some amount of tenacity added, but my goal originally was to be over 120% tenacity, thinking that with the 60% added, I'm at 180, and that's pretty good. That's a pretty good amount. But if you want to be best protected against characters that are stacking at least 100% potency on their character sheet, you'd want to have about 140% tenacity here, because through those uniques, giving the other 60%, you'd be at 200 and be, 1 for 1 on that potency tenacity check. But I am seeing players here like Aesop Rock being at 200, up over 200, right? So he's at 260% tenacity. So what teams he's concerned about that are going to be having greater than 160% potency? I don't know, but he's protected for them. Here's Kabuki Warrior, another top-ranked player who, again, went with about 175% potency, so under 180, but towards that upper end. I really don't think for most people that you're going to need to go over 180% tenacity. That's like your upper limit. So 140 to 180 seems to be the sweet spot for her. Aside from that, it's you want to make speed the next priority. So going back over to my mods real quick, I do have a decently fast protection primary, protection triangle, protection circle, tenacity cross. This is a Relic 9 character, and I will tell you, I think this character is a strong buy for a Relic 9. Especially if your guild's going to end up using this team in territory wars. This character only gets 1 life. She needs to be just as big and nasty as she can be. So, if you are not urgently needing your Relic 9s elsewhere, you might consider applying 1 to her. Alright, my speed, I wanted to be 340 originally, have her just screaming fast, because when you consider the other speed from, what is it? There's other speed gains in this kit, right? There's 30 from the leadership. There's no other speed. Okay, yeah, I think it's just the 30. So, I mean, she's right now 365 speed, and I was shooting for 370. That would be terrifying, right? So, you don't need to be quite so fast. I'd say maybe 320 plus would be a strong mark to have her. Again, this is aiming to have her in a protection primary, though, because with that 50% increased protection, man, do we want to slot as many of those as we possibly can. All right. Armor, a base figure for armor for a tank that I would always try to go for is about 70%, so the more defense you're able to bake in and push up towards that high armor mark on a tank, which is closer to 80%, so high 70s, that would be more preferred. Looking here at some of my other contemporaries, looking at Kabuki's mods, he's 322 speed. Still, he's got a mix of the bulk primaries, right? He's got protection for arrow and circle, health for triangle, but I think this is more about where he could find the tenacity he was looking for. So he was prioritizing that first, and I think you should do the same. If you're kind of caught up on your protection primaries, you maybe have a health primary that also has a desirable chunk of tenacity, take a stab at it. I think you'll like it. So yeah, 320 plus speed, still over 70% armor as a minimum. So otherwise, aside from having considerably more tenacity, fairly similar. And then Aesop's here, yeah. So he, again, you can see his mods. He's got a mix of health and protection primary, so which bulk primaries you go with seems to matter less than that you have them, so that you can take advantage of the very large survivability gains on this team. It seems to be that tenacity was the deciding factor for him in choosing these mods, and that makes sense. He is the slowest of us here at just over 300, so you might say 300 is a reasonable floor for somebody in Kyber 1. He is at over 200%, 206, almost 207% tenacity. I do think that's a little high, but, he's literally like one of the top players, like #1 player in the game, so perhaps he has an insight there that I'm missing. 71% armor, strong figure, but otherwise, yeah, just shooting for high tenacity and then speed with that bulk, right? All right, last but not least, we can talk about applications. Again, I'll refer you back to the Great Mother's video for full details. But basically, I've set up this sort based on having just this last 3 versus 3 season, because Great Mothers came out with a bespoke datacron for her, and it's absurd. It's unclear how much the modding of the team will change once that expires. But as far as making this video and releasing it at the time of this datacron being live, I would be irresponsible to not mention its impact. So yeah, I have that configured on here. I give more detail about that in the Great Mothers video. But the long and short of it is, when you look at this here, what is required to beat this team right now? Really, if you want to be smooth, nothing less than JMK or Slacker. It's kind of like that. That power spike is largely because of the datacron, so the future will tell us what's going to be required to beat it down, after that expires. Okay, that about wraps this one up. We're going to be digging into the attackers next. It's a fun faction, lots of explosive damage to it. And, thank you so much for tuning into this. If you like this video, please give it a like. Hit subscribe on the channel to see more. I always appreciate your comments and all of our interactions on Discord. Until next time, it's been real, it's been awesome, it's been real awesome. Take care.